Let's do a shtickle hakdama on Hilchos Edus. A shtickle hakdama, a shtickle overview, and then we'll get to the etzem halachas. You might be able to say that in Hilchos Edus is what differentiates more than many other halachas the difference between Yiddish way of court and lahavdil goyish way of court. One of the reasons why you can't go, we learn terrible things in Simin Chav Vav of going to Arkos, you mechalas Hashem, terrible things if you go to Arkos. What's the big deal if the verdict will be the same? So one of the practical differences is in Arkos, the way they come to a verdict is different than the way they come to a verdict in the Torah. One of the classical examples is in Arkos, they'll take an Eid Echad, and the Eid Echad that they will take will be Tom, Dick, and Harry. They don't have to necessarily go through the qualifications that we have. Whereas in the Torah, Eidus has a whole list of qualifications. Eid Echad doesn't really carry way too much weight, and who could be an aid is very important. So the outcome could be a gzeila based on Torah, because you're going to say, I have so many nice people. I have the butcher, and I have the baker, and I have the woman, and all these people testifying, which don't add up for anything in Din Torah. And you're going to pass them based on that. That will be a gzeila, ma'ivim b'yad l'yad, and eifin shalei al pi Torah. So you could say that a lot of the difference between us and lahavdil l'goyim depends a lot on Hilchos Edus. But you always have to start with a little agadita. So I want to tell you a var from the Rebbe that gives you a kitzel down your back. The Navi says, the Yeshaya Navi says in Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Yud, Atem Eidai Ne'um Hashem, Va'avdi asher bacharti, L'man teidu v'taminu li, v'tavinu ka'anihu, L'fonei lo yinoitzer ke'el, v'achrei lo yiyeh. The Eibishter says, the Navi says, that Yidden should know, Atem Eidai, every Yid walking around is walking around as a aid, a witness, a testimony that who the Eibishter is. Now, the Rebbe writes in Pirkei Avos, the Rebbe says a frightening thing. In the Pirkei Avos it says, have a marbe lachker se'edim. And you're going to learn about that you have to heavily interrogate the edim. Incidentally, you have to know that particularly works for Dinei Nefashis. In Dinei Mominus, I don't know what you guys think, but in Dinei Mominus, money comes, money goes. You don't have to put so much thorough investigation, interrogation amongst the Edim as it was in Dinei Nefashis. In Dinei Nefashis, there was Chakiras, Bedikas, Shilas, they came at the Edim from every angle. In Hilchos, in Dinei Mominus, we drop the interrogation to a much lower level. No, it's only money. Obviously, we don't want to steal, but you don't have to interrogate the Edim. You're also worried that Edim will try to hide if you give them such a hard time. So a lot of the Chakiras and Drishas we minimize when it comes to Dinei Mominus. But the Mishnah says, Havi marbar lachker se'edim. Says the Rebbe, who are the Edim in Avodas Hashem? So the Rebbe quotes a Gemara, where the Gemara says that the Edim, when a person, after 120, goes up to Shemayim and I was this, I was that, Mr. Magoo, let me give a look at what your house looked like. What's hanging on your wall? You're hanging a picture of the Rebbe, hanging Sfarim, or is the Time, Lahavdil, the Time magazine? The walls of every house is made who you are. So you are a walking aid that you believe in the Eibishter, and the Eibishter's B'der Shemayim V'aretz, as the Navi says. Not only you are, after 120, your family and your household and your house is testifying all about you. Now in Torah, the pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, there are two letters that are Oisius Ravrivin, are bigger letters. The Ayin from Shema and the Dalid from Echad, they're Oisius Ravrivin. Those two letters make up aid, the word aid. Every yid is a aid, is a witness that the Eibishter is Hashem Echad. We are made that the Eibishter is Hashem Echad. That's why it's actually brought in Svarim. There are some people that say, I can't say Shema Yisrael as a kaltblutik, because if I'm an aid, the qualifications of an aid is many. Apostle can't be, is not kosher leidus. So there are some that say, you have to daven like a mensch. You have to be mahader b'tshuva before you become an aid to testify to the Eibush as Hashem Echad. The list of who pasels, who becomes pasel as an aid, is over there. Just like when you come to a chasna and they ask you to sign the ksuba or be an aid by the knoyim, a rigid rabbi will tell you, hey, mister, for you to be a kosher aid, you have to be from a yid. Please be chayzer b'tshuva. Please do tshuva right now, and it takes a moment. Almanashani tzadik gomer is even berega chada. You become a tzadik gomer, and then you're a kosher aid. So the same is what we say every single day: Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Every yid walks around his life. You know, we know from our Yom Yom, Segeta Chassid, Sheslafta Chassid. We could say we're not only Adus that there's a Bayr Shemayim Varetz as Lubavitch Chassidim, we are walking Adus that the Star Rebbe of the Welt. So it carries a lot of weight. Now, that is a very general thing about Adus. Now let's get down to Hilchas Adus. In Hilchas Adus, let's start off with a Skira Klolis. I mentioned before, there are two types of issues. Actually, there are three types of issues. There is Dine Nefashis, there is Dine Mominus, and there is plain old Isser. What's the difference between these three? Dine Nefashis is, you see somebody killing somebody, is life and death issues. Dine Mominus is money. No, the Welt steht nicht auf Geld, but it's money. People are always fighting about money. And then there is Isser. You're testifying that this guy committed adultery. You're testifying that this guy is doing terrible things with his kids or whatever. Or he's even eating treif. He's Michael Treifus. Those are three categories of where...
What category would Hilchos Shabbos fall under, since it's a din of fashis that like you get...
It's a very good shaila. It's a little of both. Good shaila. Very good shaila. He says a lot of mitzvahs have einshim that are death sentence. So what would that be? Okay, it's not a major nafkamina yet, but b'chlal, when you have issues at hand, they get categorized into three. So we already know from Hilchas Dayanim that dinei nefashis Dayanim today don't deal with anyways. It's not motzui and it's not chisar and kiss, so we don't deal with dinei nefashis, and we only deal with dinei mominus. Isser. Sometimes. Isser. Sorry?
It says you can even do nefashos if there's a problem breaking
right, but that's an exception. First of all, practically, nobody, even if a problem breaks out, no rabbi, no bezdin is going to pass din in nefashos today because they're going to end up in jail. But that's but most of our issues, 99% of our issues are dinei mominus. And a little would be Isser. A little would be Isser because we're trying to plug holes. We're trying to protect issues. I was learning with somebody this morning, and the Ramah says over there that there's a mitzvah. Actually, it's not the Ramah. I think the Alter Rebbe. Okay, I'll let him jump on that Alter Rebbe a little later. He says there is a mitzvah to clean up the mess amongst people. Okay, put that aside. So we have dinei mominus, dinei nefashis, and Isser. Primarily, we deal with dinei mominus. The type of Eidim, we all know the famous Sikha from the Rebbe, with that the Rebbe categorizes Eidim into two types of Eidis. There's Eidei Birur, and there's Eidei Kiyum. What are the difference between Eidei Birur and Eidei Kiyum? When you go to a chasana, or lahavdu, I shouldn't say lahavdu, or you go to you're part of a get ceremony, those eidim are different than an aid that comes to a din Torah, a dispute over money. A chasana if there aren't witnesses to see the chassan being mekadesh the kala, the kiddushin didn't happen. He gave her the ring. I remember in Minnesota there was a crazy story. There was a woman who was a flirt, and she got married once, got married a second. And it came out to the third or fourth time. No rabbi wanted to officiate a wedding, but she knows a little. She's smarter than the smart. So she walked into the L'chaim grocery store. She walked in with her boyfriend to the L'chaim grocery store, and she tells the guy behind the counter, "Hey, you, could you watch this?" And her boyfriend gives her a ring and says, "Harayat mikadeshusli." She knew she had to get it done. No rabbi wanted to officiate it, but for the kiddushin to be chal, the ma'aseh could have happened. In other words, the man could have given her rings. If there are no eidim to testify and watch it, the chalois of kiddushin did not happen. The same is by gittin. If the eidim are not there, are not part of the gittin, there is no gittin. Most of the cases when you're dealing with a din Torah, that's not that type of edis. We're talking about edis that are edei birur. Edei birur means there's a dispute between two people. The Rebbe talks about this in Chelik Yutes and in Kiseitze, the famous Rogatchover. Edei birur, there's a dispute between two people. Was the black car that hit the red car? Was it you owe me the money? You promised me the money? So we need somebody to come and say what really happened, to verify what took place. So there is Eidei Birur. So most of the Eidim that we will deal with is actually Eidei Birur more than Eidei Kiyum. So let's give a general overview. Was Kemish and learning in 10, 12 Simonim about the Eidim? How much information do we need to know? So let me go. I'm giving you a sneak preview on the 10 Simonim. Number one, how important is it to actually show up and testify? Is it a mitzvah? Is it a lav? What's going on? Maybe I don't like to be on the scene. I don't want people to know. I want to lay low. Do I have to come and support or testify on behalf of anybody? And that's actually the opening simon. Do I must share my information that I know? And that's going to be today's share. In the next simon, he will go on, once you did share the information, could you come and tweak it? Could you say, this? What I said yesterday, I meant this, or there was another detail I left out. Or once you said your information, you have a time period, you have a slot when you could say what's on your mind. When you're done, you're done. You cannot come back and change anything you said. The next simon goes on to discuss, how do we know that these eidim are for real? Maybe they're untergestellte, maybe they don't remember clearly. So it's the question of chakiras or drishas. How detailed do we go in interrogating them to make sure that they're accurate what they say? And this is a big fundamental difference between Dinei Mamonis and Dinei Nefashis. Then we talk about, I remember as a youngster, L'Toiv Yizocha, I see in Crown Heights today, it's Rabbi Galitzky's birthday, so I'll mention something, a shir I heard from him about 40 years ago. He mentions the famous Chakira from Rabbi Akiva Eger. If today kemeya, meya ketrei. When you have two witnesses, one witness is almost nothing. The only thing that one witness could accomplish is that the opponent has to rebuttal it with a shavua. More than a shavua, he doesn't. But that's how powerful. As much powerful as the Eid Echad goes, Eid Echad is not mechayiv a tashlum. He can't. It's not enough evidence that you have to pay because your opponent brought an Eid Echad. If, however, you brought two Eidim, slam dunk. Two Eidim is closed. It's over. So now the question becomes:
Why do you have the whole union of why do we force an aid? Why is it in Liyagid Visa?
Very good. We're going to get to that. Very good. Very good. We're going to get to that today. Very good, Shaila. If Eid Echad really doesn't do anything, first of all, it does do a shvuah. And a shvuah could prevent, a person could be scared off and could prevent the loss of money also. We'll talk about that. Okay, so what happens if I have two Eidim to prove my case, but you're not laying low, you also have Eidim. So there's two questions. What happens to contradicting sets of Eidim? I bring two and you bring two. And does it make a difference if I brought 20 and you brought 4? Do numbers matter once you go past 2? All right. Then, once you get to Siman Lamed Gimel, Lamed Daled, that's Gishmak. Because Lamed Gimel, Lamed Daled, Lamed Hey talks about who is disqualified. What disqualifies an aid? So there are a couple categories. There's a category of a group of people who are puzzled because they are kroivim. They're too close of a relative. That becomes technical. And by the way, that's the main reason I didn't do, you should learn Hilchos Edus much quicker, because I think when you come to that siman, you push it neat charts. A cousin, a first cousin, a second cousin, it's a Rishon Berishin, a Rishon B'Sheni. It becomes a little dizzy. So it's Gishmak. But you just have to have a lot of visual. What's a second cousin to a wife's brother? You know what I mean? You just have to, and this is Meisim B'chol Yoim. Meisim B'chol Yoim it happens. I'll tell you a mistake. I'm confessing now on 2 shiurim, here and on YouTube. A mistake that I made a couple of years ago. And thank God it was on a Tnoim, which by Eidus, by Tnoim B'chlal is no big deal. If it would have been by a ksuba, oh boy, it would be earth-shattering. One of the people who came to sign as by a ksuba, well, it was chas v'shalom, by a tnoim, was the Kala's aunt's second husband. I was just getting,
She's a today.
But there is no difference between a first or second husband, halacha. Once it's a husband, it's a husband. I blew it away, you know. And later, why I did that. It's not so simple. Thank God it was for Tnoim. So there's a whole section of people who are disqualified because they're kroivim. Which, by the way, that's obvious, a big difference between Yiddishkeit and secular. In the secular, you have to bring a witness. You can bring the man's brother. You'll bring his mother. You'll bring his mother-in-law. In Yiddishkeit, kroivim apsulim. So the question is, how far does the Kartiv go? I heard of a story that once there was a chuppah in front of the 770, a Baal Tshuva family, and one of the Rabbanim officiated the wedding, and as he's walking back after the chasna, he hears the chasna going to who was the aid, thank you, Uncle Joe. The guy was just the aid, and he hears him calling him Uncle Joe. It turns out it was a figure of speech, Uncle Joe. It wasn't his real uncle. Or maybe it was his distant uncle. But this is, you got to do investigation before you have Eidim. So there's Psuli Eidim for kurva, for closeness, relationship, relatives. There's Psuli Eidim because of Rishoyim. The Torah says, Al Tashis Yotcha im Rasha Lias Eid. A Rasha is Pasul Eidus. And the question is, who is a Rasha? What is a Rasha? For us Lubavitch Chassidim, you have to know. that a Tinek Shenishba is discussed in this Siman, in Siman Lamed Daled. If you're allowed to use people who are Mechalei Shabbos, but this is one of the sources. Incidentally, I heard a phenomenal psak din this week from Rabbi Yoshev that's very helpful. Somebody once came running into Rabbi Yoshev and said, Rebbe, I run a place with a rehabilitation center. People come to relax after going through crisis, and it's in Israel. And a guy signed into my program, and he signed in on Tuesday, and he says, I'm coming Tuesday, and I'm leaving Saturday afternoon. So he comes running. He's paying him for Tuesday, and he says he's leaving Saturday afternoon. So he comes and asks Rabbi Yashiv, am I allowed to take him? He's telling me clearly that he's staying for Shabbos and he's leaving on Shabbos. When I heard this person saying the Shaila, he asked Rabbi Yashiv, I thought, Litzvah Shagadol, Mistama took out the rifle and he's going to start, throw him away, throw him. Rabbi Yashiv said a beautiful psak din. He says, if you don't take him, where is he going to go? To St. Mary's. You know what's going to, if he goes to St. Mary's, already tonight, he's going to be eating treif. Till Shabbos, he's going to be eating treif. Let him come to you. Let him start eating, let him eat kosher every single day. And what happens by Shabbos, hopefully by Shabbos will happen. Whatever happens, happens. At least right now, you're starting off with eating kosher. It's a gewaldige chab. Anyway, so there is a psul of kurva and there's a psul of rishayim. And then there is a psul of hana. Psul of hana is somebody who's negeya be'edus. Somebody who benefits from the outcome of this case. He is also possible to be an edus. And then there is the classical discussion that there is, and that happens by every single chasana. Now that you tell me that there are people who are disqualified for edus, what is the din of a kat edim, a group of edim, let's say 50 edim, and one of them is pasul? One of them is a karev. Does it pop the whole bubble and it makes everybody disqualified? Or we could just do it with the rest. And la'alacha we paskin that if nimtze echad mehem karev apostle, they all become disqualified. Right? So here comes the $1 million question. When you stand under a chuppah, everybody closest to the chassan and kala are fathers and mothers, women and children, and they're all people, 90% of them, 98% of them are people who are psulim for this chasana, because they're relatives. So how does the edus work? So that's why till about 15, 20 years ago, you never heard this announcement. But 15, 20 years ago, it started this announcement. We are asking Chaim and Baruch to be the aid to exclude everyone else.
You don't need it.
You don't need it. But that whole discussion, I know that you learned the Siddur Kedushin, but that whole discussion is a siman in Hilchos Edus. Right, but it's all in the siman. It's not in Even Ezer. It's all about Edus over here. So this is a brief summary of the whole Hilchos Edus.